Oh yes, you're all well. There's an interesting effect happening with the psychic weather at the moment. It happens every few years that it goes into a kind of a tornado, and people's shadow they, they it begins to dance in full view in a very kind of unpleasant way. Now, the the field has been unstable for a few months now, and a lot of it has to do with the U.S. election and the fact that no one knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows, and the instability in that field is a reflection of in that world, in that situation, is reflective of the instability as a whole within the field. And this is why I've been telling people, advising them to maybe not do, like, if you do ritual magic, don't be doing it around now, and don't do anything kind of major life decisions like get engaged or something stupid like that, or get married or something on a fly. It's because things are not real at the moment. Things are not real. Wait till they've settled down a bit. Of course, how you live your own life is your own business. I'm just saying this is what I wouldn't do. And it's a lot of it started. It literally went on like a switch yesterday. All these loonies started coming out of the woodwork, and people who are not loonies, their shadow, and we all have a shadow. See, I come from the Jordan Peterson and way of thinking in terms of humans, in that, like, not all humans are bad and not all humans are good, but humans can be both depending on the external stimuli that impacts upon them. And one of the things that impacts upon people's external stimuli is the moon, and in particular some moons are stronger than others, and in terms of generating psychic turmoil. And it's been well known forever. And for some reason, the moon coming up on Monday out of the blue, very surprisingly, seems to be really winding them up. Now people say, well, it's not full moon till Monday, but it's not. It doesn't work like that. There's a build up. The waxing gibbous moon is where it happens, and it's almost like a balloon is being blown up and pops. When a balloon just doesn't appear inflated. It inflates and then it pops and bursts, and it's like that's what the waxing gibbous to full moon is like. It's like the analogy of the chase is better than the catch, that kind of a thing, and it's the build up, and that seems to be very badly affecting people right now. I'm seeing in real life. There's a lot of narkiness, a lot of anger, a lot of repressed feelings about people. If you have people in your life that are otherwise fine, but they have a sort of a repressed criticism of you, or something about you they don't like. And remember, this doesn't mean that they don't like everything about you. It just means that there's something about you, an element of your personality they don't like. It pops up. It pops up at times like this, and that doesn't mean that you should hate them or anything like that. It just means you just roll with it. You just roll with the thing, and it's like what Jordan Peterson says. Not everyone is good, and not, well, psychopaths are evil, but, like, not everyone is good. Not everyone is society. People as a whole are bad or evil, but they can go both ways. And this is why I'm always stressing independence and free will. You know, don't run with the crowd. If you have a tribe, make it a tribe of associations, but not a formal. As soon as someone starts listing down a list of commands and a structure, like, I'm number one, she's number two, they're number four, any kind of thing like that, don't get involved in it. Anything, like I always say, anything that has an organizational constitution or bill of order, of rules and regulations. Don't enter into anything like that willingly. That's always a bad sign. And so you have loose associations, or what Jung referred to as free associations, of like-minded people, but you're not a constitutional faction. You're a loose grouping that is connected by something that you, as a feeling or an idea or a way of thinking, that attracts you to one another, but You're not slavishly devoted to one aspect of that. Now, this weekend, a lot of that will become apparent. You'll have things like gang bullying. Anyone who sets a gang on anyone this weekend is someone to be really avoided. And this weekend, especially, I don't know if it's your country, but in Ireland, they have loosened, or they've announced the loosening of the coronavirus lockdowns. In fact, it's quite a broad range of loosening up, and there's normies out there who are absolutely in love with the lockdowns and the whole COVID-19 situation. They love their masks, they love their social, because it brought meaning to their lives. They need rules and regulations, most of them out there. And when they were told yesterday that things were going to go back somewhat, a little bit more towards normal, well, they become frightened. They become very, very frightened because they need daddy government and television person to tell them what to do and think. They're very comfortable being bossed around, having rules to tell them to live by. Because if they didn't have that, they end up staring into the black shadow of their own abyss, and they see there's nothing in there. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. Now, most of the normies out there, they don't mean you any harm directly. I should have stressed that in the video yesterday, but they don't mean you harm directly. The thing is that they're driven by Pavlovian base primal fears. They have a level, the normie pot bangers on your street and that archetype have within them, like the coppers you saw that kneeled took the knee in front of mobs. Those types have a primal fear inside them that most of us couldn't even begin to comprehend. It's a deep, ferocious primal fear. And it's a fear of having to face who they really are, which is nothing. And so they will gladly, gladly do what's ever told of them by the mob in order not to stare into the abyss of their own nothingness. And this is what you have to. People accuse me of being very nihilistic and dark when it comes to society. No, I'm not nihilistic and dark when it comes to society and society in itself. I'm fully aware of things like the Chinese Communist Revolution, the Pol Pot Year Zero, the other aspects of existence of societies where people who would normally not bother you can be turned into atrocious monsters. And that's because the likes of I'm wheezing because I used a bloody chemical hob cleaner yesterday and it's been affecting my lungs ever since. I'm not sick or anything. But that primal fear is so deep that in order to avoid that, they will undertake the most appalling acts of viciousness and cruelty. And this is what the Bolsheviks understood. It's what the Maoists understood. It's what the Khmer Rouge understood. It's what the Plymouth Puritans understood. That once that primal fear is in there, you see, if you can make a society terrified of its individuality, they'll do anything. That's what happened in Imperial Japan. That's why the Japanese soldiers and civilians were so fanatic, because they had their lives taken away from them and all put into, from decades, centuries of conditioning, into their emperor. And the very thought of their emperor not existing was just incomprehensible to them, because if the emperor didn't exist as a leader, them Japanese as individuals couldn't exist as people, because it was the prime driver of their identity. And we're seeing this now with the coronavirus. There's so many of them who absolutely love the coronavirus, lockdown, social distancing, masks, a lot. It's brought meaning to their lives. It's given them a series of rules that they can follow. And like I said, there was Patrick Henningsen posted a video on Twitter yesterday from 24th Century Wire. And it was from Russia Today originally. And it showed a woman, from a woman's perspective, a couple walking past her, and she wasn't wearing a mask. Now, this is in the woods now, in the mountains. It wasn't even in the city or anything like that. And the guy says, wear a mask. And she goes, I'll wear, I go away, mind your own business. He goes over and spits on her and says, "Girl, I have COVID." Now, the reason why he spat on her and told her to wear a mask is because when he saw her without the mask, his mob control over her was lost. Was lost. And you see this with things like smear campaigns, a collective smear campaign. You will see the ones who will flip because they have that primal terror inside them. It's a deep, it's a cowardice that's almost impossible to comprehend. But this is what they're like. They're ultimately driven by a cowardice. It's a level of cowardice that's beyond. Now, I'm not talking about people are begrudgingly wearing the mask saying, I have to do my job, it's bullshit, but I have to do it. I'm not talking about the ones who fully embrace these things. And they have this deep-rooted cowardice, and driven by the very minuscule thought of their primal fears rising, that they will have to face who they really are, and they would rather die than face who they really are. But at the same time too, if they can kill you first or destroy you first to avoid facing who they really are, they will do that. That's the option along the way. And this is what makes the mob very, very dangerous, because the mob is not, it doesn't know why it doesn't consciously know why it has to go chasing with pitchforks. It doesn't know that consciously why, but subconsciously there is a terror like you cannot imagine inside them that drives them to this. It's beyond comprehension. Now, as the matrix and the field has been unstable since the US elections, hullabaloo, all that stuff, I knew this would happen anyway. Until that's settled one way or another, the disruption in the field is making them jittery. And when the Irish government announced a slight relaxation of the restrictions yesterday, actually it was a fairly good, it was a positive step. I would see it that way. You know, I'm not a utopian. I'll take whatever good, I'll take, I'll take the odd flecks of gold and a piece of shit rather than see it all as one piece of shit. I'm not that kind of person. I'll make the most of all, I come from nothing, so I know how to make the most of very little. But the fear now hits them. They're now in terror, because a reducing of the restrictions means that in their minds the restrictions on COVID and everything will eventually be ended, and they won't have orders telling them what to do anymore. They won't have. This is a religion for them. This is a religion, and it's given them meaning to their lives, and they're terrified. They look at the future without COVID-19 restrictions, and they're staring into a total and utter abyss, and that abyss terrifies them, because that abyss represents the one thing that they fear more than anything else, and that's their individuality, because there's nothing in there. And this is why I see people, I've been telling people for years, stop trying to wake people up. It won't happen. Some might come around. But when they do get angry at governments and things like that, it's not because of their waking up, it's because of anger. Because of anger. And that anger is useful for people like us who are trying to disrupt things like the Great Reset. We channel it, it's useful. But that doesn't mean they're on your side. That doesn't mean you're waking up. The guy who's pissed off that is wet pubs. You see that in all the wet pubs. The pubs that don't serve food are closing now until the new year, and people are furious about it. They look forward to their beers with their friends at Christmas. Well, in the pub, and that's been taken from them. And this is why they're angry, not because of any government. They're angry because they can't go for a beer. But it's a useful anger for us to actually channel. That's important. So again, like the Jordan Peterson thing, that everyone is not either good, or society is not either bad, people are not either good or people are not either bad. It's the same thing with their anger. It can be either good or it can be either bad, depending on how you channel it. But this weekend, coming up to the full moon, the youth, if you suffer from from depression or something like that, I mean real depression, people that have the real problem, not the ones who feel sorry for themselves and need need enablers and sympathy mongers. I mean people that really have it. I would suggest just try to maintain control, stay away from drugs and alcohol, stay away from alcohol especially, and if I'm not going to drink it all this weekend. I mean, the moon does have this power. It's a very strange thing, and nobody knows why. It's just one of these strange things of the moon. I mean, there's no reason why the moon, in full sunlight on it, should be any more powerful than the moon. It doesn't, because it doesn't affect the gravitational pull directly or anything like that. But it seems to affect us and people, society especially. And they've always known this. This is why there's an Irish song called "The Rising of the Moon," and it's a Freemasonic song, believe it or not. And it goes, the boys will come together at the rising of the moon. The moon was used by Freemasons in terms of war as a kind of a psychic trigger. They knew they would get people acting more irrationally on a full moon, so they would actually encourage them to start battles and fight them then. They could also fight late at night because the countryside would be lit up from the full moon. You look through history, a lot of battles were deliberately planned on the full moon by Freemasons for that reason. Now, so just hold on. I'm not going to get better on Tuesday because there'll be a waning gibbous then. It'll take a few days later. But there's ferocious disruption in the field. You'll be feeling very emotional, I bet. Narky, a bit annoyed. This is the time to just sit at home, drink cups of tea, and read a book. Do something like that. Or go and watch movies. But don't watch movies that cheer you up or fill your soul or something like that. That's a good. I have a large collection of art books, the paintings in them, and I like to look through them. That helps me a lot. There's something about flicking the pages on an art coffee table book of paintings. That's something very beautiful about that. It's hard to explain, but I find that really helpful. And if you're creative, you do music or something, yeah, go for that as well. Anything like that. But it's not a good. Like I said, if someone gets narky or snarky or aggressive towards you, don't engage. Just switch them off. Just switch them off. If it's really bad, get rid of them. If it's really condescending and nasty, get rid of them. Because, but like I said, we all have things about other people, even people we love, that we don't like, but we keep them to avoid hurting them. We don't say them. But at times like this, people who still love you might say things that are hurtful or seem, what the hell is that all about? Just let it pass. This is one of the things I've learned only in the last few years, is that just ignore things and let them pass. And along with blocking people out of your life who cause problems for you, or not growing you as a person, or not helping you, and you're feeling increasingly, what's the word, perturbed or uncomfortable around them. That's when there's no hope in a situation like that, you get rid of those people completely. But there's other ones who are fine, and they're probably going through a bad period, and you ride it out with them because that deep inside their souls are good. Now, I don't apply that to society as a whole, because society is not this. You see, this is one of the problems that people make. They think because their internal emotions that they're having inside themselves are reflected by the mob. They're not. I say, like you say to yourself, I would never burn down a house with children in it. You wouldn't, and many of the people in the mob wouldn't when they're outside the mob. But inside the mob has a mind of its own. And that mob mind is extremely volatile. Extremely volatile. And it's almost like an oversoul or an overconsciousness that's very poorly developed. It has not attained enlightenment of any to any great degree. It's getting there. It's trying. but it's still infantile in its collective manifestation. And when you project your individual personality onto the mob, you're making a huge mistake because it's a different personality. And what those types I said in the mob, they have sacrificed their individuality in order to feed the mob. Because in the mob, it's safe. And what makes it safe is the fact that they don't have to make decisions. Because they will go through enormous avoidance of trying to make decisions. It's just how they are in the mob. And they will have, and then the group mob soul, this kind of archontic, reptilian brain driven, infantile, over ego, group ego, they find that very satisfying. It's very comforting because you have to understand that, like, when the mob is burning down a house with children in the past, you hear the stories of them going into Jewish pogroms, and they go into the Jewish neighborhood and they burn the Jewish neighborhood down, and the children are being burned alive in the buildings. And you would think, how could they stand there and see people screaming, children screaming as they're being burnt alive? Well, you don't understand. The mob feels very comfortable about that. That gives them reassurance that as long as they're burning down, they're not burning me. That's how they feel. That's why I think Ken Russell's movie, The Devils, is one of the greatest movies ever made. Because it really shows, like, well, it's really about the woke society today and the cancel culture projected back into Reformation era France. But watch that film is so powerful, The Devils, and it's you watch it's like you say the best science fiction is the story of now told in science fiction. Well, the best historic dramas are the story of now told in historic, even though they're true stories at the time. And The Devils really does show that powerfully. And they're comforted by it, and they don't feel guilt afterwards. You think to yourself, God, will they feel terribly guilty? No, the mob did it. I didn't do it. The mob mind did it. That's how they think. And so this is why I tell you, like, they don't think. You say to them, if it came out that this was, well, it will come out that this Rona thing was the worst thing ever. They'll never admit that they took part in it. It's just like the Nuremberg trials. The Nazis, why did you do things like that? And they go, I just followed orders. The mob mind was in control. And do you have any guilt about it? No, because the National Socialist Party's orders made me do it. I didn't do it. You see, an incredible level of dissociation builds into the mob mind. It's astounding. It's astounding the level of dissociation that the average normie is capable of. They can undertake in the mob the most horrific acts of wickedness and perdition, but afterwards not have any guilt about it because the dissociated mind that operated within that, in their case, the mob mind, was the one that did it. And that's what you're going to see this weekend. You're going to see that kind of bizarre carry-on in group pathology, and individuals who will manifest aspects of their personality. It's up to you to decide whether they're really nasty inside, or it's just a bad phase, or it's just a thing that's passing through their psychology. But let it roll. Just let it pass. Let it roll. Be kind. Be kind to that in the individual people you love that may have showing a bad time, a bad way. In terms of the mob, be fucking aware. Okay. So enjoy your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. And look after yourselves. Okay. All the best. Bye.